We are officially in the off season. This is episode number 56 of Hitting for the Cycle. That's Ben Kruse. I'm Ryan Touhey. It's been a while. Last time we spoke with all of you, we recapped the World Series, and about a month has passed, and now the juicy off season is getting hotter and hotter here, and the winter meetings are right around the corner. So Ben, how are you feeling about everything?
I'm doing well, Ron. It's glad to be back for now a off-season edition here. So thanks everyone for being a little patient with us. I know it's been a while, but now we get a little bit of baseball content, of course, with next week being very, very critical. And hope Ron as well too. You had a great Thanksgiving break, of course, because we're recording this right after that happened. So and of course now we are officially in the last month of the year. So it's been a little while since we of course spoke, but hope you're doing well.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I did have a very good Thanksgiving. Same to you and your family, and same to all of our audience members. I hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody has a happy holidays as we enter the final month of 2024. It's wild. It's already December. It's absolutely wild. And we're going to get into some baseball content for all of you. But before we do, we just want to remind everybody to please follow Hitting for the Cycle on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC ETB. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network right below. And finally, listen to us on whatever platforms you listen to your podcasts.
As always, folks, this episode is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience, from playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB network to find out more, including a live stream schedule. We're actually having a ton of stuff this week on Playback, starting tonight with NBA. We kind of had a little break with that stuff, but we're officially going back to this week. So make sure to really join into our live stream schedule. We're starting some stuff tonight with the NBA whip around with some bunch of games, and of course some more stuff ahead with the NBA Cup and much more. So make sure to join into that stuff. We have a lot of stuff on tap this week with Playback.
All right, so we're going to get into it. So the off season, for the most part, has been relatively silent. Not much has been going on until this past week. And what better team to start with than the defending world champion Los Angeles Dodgers, who continue to stack up their roster. First of all, they signed free agent left-hander Blake Snell to a 5-year deal worth $182 million. That deal was announced on November 26th. And the deal is pending a physical. It includes no opt-outs, and it has some deferred money. Get ready for this theme. It's going to become a common trend with the Dodgers for the foreseeable future, I think. And it also includes a $52 million signing bonus. This is coming from Jorge Castillo and Jeff Passan of ESPN. And, for the Dodgers, this gives them a much-needed extra arm and for that rotation. That rotation was severely depleted last season. Didn't affect them, obviously, because they went all the way to the World Series. But the Dodgers definitely want to have more stability in that rotation for the foreseeable future, especially when you got guys like Tyler Glasnow coming back next year eventually. Snell definitely gives them, a little bit of an edge for that rotation. Snell last year was with the Giants. He made 20 starts for the Giants. Obviously, he had a reduced season because he took forever to sign with them because he was looking for a ridiculous contract. But his season last year with the Giants, he started 20 games, went 5-3, had a 3.12 ERA and 104 innings pitched, 145 strikeouts, and a 1.05 WHIP. And he also no-hit the Cincinnati Reds last year during the summer as well. So, yeah, the Dodgers just continue to add big names to their team. So throw Blake Snell into the mix. And in addition to that, the Dodgers have also re-signed utility Superman and NLCS MVP Tommy Edman to a 5-year deal as well. And Edman's deal is worth $74 million. And he was acquired by the Dodgers at the deadline of last year. This is coming from Jeff Passan of ESPN. And he mostly played between center field and shortstop. And he drove in 11 runs in that NLCS victory over the Mets. and he had a 988 OPS and 6 runs in 5 games against the Yankees in the World Series. So he just tortured New York baseball at the tail end of the postseason. And so this contract will run through 2029 for Edman. And yeah, the Dodgers just continue to stack up on their roster, and I mentioned this in our last episode back the end of December or of October, I'm sorry, how the Dodgers are going to be here for quite some time. And this only solidifies it. I think the Dodgers are going to be a thorn in everybody's side for quite some time. And watch out, baseball, because we could have repeat champions on the horizon, if you ask me. If you were to ask me the early season favorites for next year's World Series, I probably lean towards LA, unfortunately. We'll see. We'll get into all that stuff, as the offseason goes along. But yep, Dodgers continue to hand out contracts with deferred money, and it's going to be frustrating for fans of other teams, no doubt.
Yeah. Are we shocked, Ryan? Right. They won the World Series, and Andrew Freeman's like, yeah, we're going to kind of keep on going and pound you guys even more. The rich get richer. And I hate, too, like, how good of a sign this is for the Dodgers, but it's also sparked business for them. Because I know, like, I've been seeing so many people on social media saying, oh, they can't keep getting away with this, right? It's so annoying, like, they keep on signing guys. But it's also, for me, like, teams are eligible to sign players with deferred money. And it's just crazy enough that the Dodgers really have been the only team that's kind of stepped up to this case and made this happen. Now, I obviously understand with the Ohtani one, it might be a little bit different, but it's just the way that now that the baseball business is going, and I think that they're basically using it in a way of like, all right, we're going to just keep on supplementing more guys in. And Blake Snell's another guy that I think could really help a lot. I know that I'm not surprised with him too, because we talked about him one of the first couple months of this year, that he was one of the late arrivals from Scott Boras to sign last year. So I think that he, as a free agent this offseason, looked at that and like saying, I'm not doing this again. I'm going to sign early. And if I know my team right away, I'm going to make this happen and be one of the first guys off the board. So I'm not surprised. I'm a little surprised, obviously, with the destination, but I do think that's a really good fit. And the Dodgers right now, I don't really want to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. They're like the new empire of baseball, where everybody essentially is going to get their best chance. They just won the World Series, and now they're going to keep on adding. And you put Blake Snell with, of course, Shohei Ohtani to be eligible to pitch now this year, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Tyler Glasnow. They have essentially a four-headed monster of number one pitchers, or at least number two at worst. And I think that Blake Snell, they're southpaw, of course, lefties in terms of guys like Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, they're at the end of their careers. Blake Snell, of course, is still in his prime. I know he's obviously had an injury track record here and there, but he was one of the best pitchers last year in the second half. The last 2 seasons, second half, his numbers are absolutely incredible. So there's really nothing that you can say, but congrats to the Dodgers. And I know that they're obviously going to be a thorn to everybody for the rest of for a while, I'd say. So. In terms of Tommy Edman, this was a really good deal too as well for the Dodgers. Tommy Edman really was a postseason hero. I know that of course everybody wants to talk about Freddie Freeman and Shohei and all these big time guys, but typically when you win a championship, it's not always the big time guys that are essentially going to make it all happen. You need to, of course, have an X factor. You need to have a spark plug, and Tommy Edman was by far the spark plug of that Dodgers team. He was great in the defense. He was great in terms of guys on base, contact hitter. So I know, of course, that a lot of people are like, how are they keep on doing this and that? But they're really smart with the way that they're putting their money in, and they're making this work. And I think that if you're an organization for baseball, and I'm not saying, to start doing what the Dodgers are doing, but, if you essentially see a guy that you really want to have, or, guys essentially going to be out there that, a guy like Tommy Edman, for instance, where you feel like a 5-year deal might be a lot. You saw in terms of what happened, he made his money worth. And in a market like now in baseball, the market's going to be absolutely crazy. So you're going to have to overpay a little bit. So just crazy. But congrats to the Dodgers on getting these two guys.
And I think it also goes to show just how willing these players are to have deferred money in their contracts. I think it shows that the Dodgers have created a very solid foundation. The guys know that this is a team first mentality, and they want to be a part of that. They want to be able to have a good chance to win the World Series. They know that this is not every. This is a place where it's not every man for himself. That this is not a one man show. This is a cohesive team effort, and the Dodgers have built that up. This is the way it is here. And if you're a member of this team, you're expected to be a good teammate and you're expected to contribute. And the fact that guys are willingly going in there, deferring money in their contracts, it goes to show that the Dodgers have, done a good job of building up a good clubhouse reputation. Guys like to come here, they like to play here. And yeah, it's I don't know if sneaky is the right word, but I think it's ingenious if you ask me. Like just how the Dodgers have been able to do this, and guys are going to keep coming if they continue to have this kind of success and they keep having this kind of camaraderie. I almost said the Giants, the Dodgers. Everybody looks like everybody's each other's best friends. They all play well together. They all have a lot of fun. They know how good they are, and they're going to be good for quite some time. They are going to continue to dominate the National League West. They're going to continue to dominate for the foreseeable future. I'm not looking forward to it. I don't think
I don't think anyone is.
anybody but the Dodgers.
I hate to. I don't think this is really much of a great comparison, but crossing sports in terms of like at least being the Kansas City Chiefs of baseball. I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, they're starting to, I think, going to start to build a dynasty in terms of just an overall success, building guys. Because essentially, when you have guys, especially at the helm of Shohei Ohtani and some of these big time stars, Mookie Betts, obviously, who I didn't mention before, but that attracts other guys to come to your destination. I knew for a fact with Blake Snell, right, that of course, we're going to get our predictions later on, but I had him staying on the West Coast because I think that's what he preferred, right? So if it wasn't going to be a team like the Dodgers, maybe a team like the Angels, like I always thought for so long with Blake Snell, he'd be like a perfect overpay for a team like the Angels, right? But to be kind of their main guy, to be their ace. But I guess that Blake Snell is looking at this opportunity in terms of, has he ever won a championship, Ryan?
Snell has never won a World Series. He's been in one, obviously, the COVID shortened 2020 World Series where he was pulled by Kevin Cash.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think he's looking at this opportunity and be like, listen, I can stay on the West Coast. I got a chance to win my first World Series, and I could be in a rotation field of a ton of great overall talent. It makes just too much sense in the world. And I just don't understand how people are just absolutely just giving him shit for in terms of going there. I understand, of course, the ring chasing and stuff. I can understand that. But shit, if I was in a situation and I got a chance to win my first ever championship and I was staying on the West Coast, I mean, how could you not?
It's the easiest decision he'll probably ever make in his life. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I don't blame him for going.
Especially after last year, like him waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're like we talked about Snell and Montgomery for like months in terms of what's going to happen, this and that, and now of course he looks at this and is like, well, I'm not doing this again. I essentially know right away I'm going to LA.
You're not going to find a better team on paper than the Dodgers. It's not even Christmas yet, and like you said, he waited an eternity to sign last year with a mediocre Giants team. That team went nowhere. You're with the defending World Series champion. You have a job locked up already at this time of the season, and it's with the world champions. Why on earth wouldn't you sign?
And he got paid too. Like he got a great contract. So
great contract.
Everything essentially lined up for him.
Yeah, he's sitting pretty. He's gonna have a great Christmas this year. I'll say that. And he's probably gonna. And I'm expecting him to have a very solid season next year. I mean, I've always thought Snell was a little overrated because of the walks. I always think that he just throws way too many pitches for his own good. But that doesn't necessarily. I mean, we'll see what happens. But I mean, the Dodgers going into next season, they're obviously a clear favorite. They might be the strong. I mean, it's kind of surprising how how the Astros, for all the domination that they've had over the past decade, how they never repeated as world champions. Mm-hmm. The Astros obviously had been to 4 World Series, but they won 2 of them. But those were obviously 5 years apart. You got to look at the Dodgers as maybe the potential to finally break the trend of no repeat world champions in baseball. Baseball hasn't had a repeat champion in over 20 years, and I know it's different sports, but I remember earlier this year when UConn basketball was trying to become the first repeat champion since Florida in 06 and 07, and that happened. and the Chiefs were looking to become the first Super Bowl repeat champion since New England in 2003 and 2004, both of your favorite teams, UConn and New England. Those trends, were snapped this year. Obviously, UConn repeating, Kansas City repeating. Maybe the Dodgers continue that and they repeat next year. I hope not, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. The Dodgers are a force, and it's going to be hell for Major League Baseball. And Tommy Edman, what a deal! That probably goes down as one of the greatest moves in Dodger history.
That was easily.
Oh man, I would have loved to have had it. I wish I would kill to have like a super utility man who can hit, who's a switch hitter, can just rip the ball to all sides of the field. Oh, it's perfect.
Yeah,
I'm jealous. I'm very, very jealous. I wish. Oh,
God. And Ron, I don't want to like rub the salt on the wound too, but I want to ask you this in terms of, because I was talking to my buddy yesterday. I was at the Patriots game, but I asked him yesterday. I said, does this Dodgers team kind of remind you the way they approach guys in terms of spending of like the old Hal Steinbrenner Yankees, in which every single season, no matter in terms of what type of payroll that they had, they just kept on spending and spending to really make their team as great as they can possible and to sustain. I mean, because people were saying for so long, for the last couple of years, money doesn't lead to buying championships. Well, that narrative kind of went out to, you know what, because they spent a shit ton last offseason and they won the World Series. So, I mean, it could happen now. I mean, you have to find ways to get star players in this league to be able to win championships. It's pretty much simple as that.
Yeah, that was basically what I was about to say. You got to do some spending regardless. I don't care who you are, what your market is. You got to be willing to spend some money on some players. No team, because you're gonna go through some adversity throughout the course of a season. Every single team does. It's very rare to go wire to wire without any kind of challenges. So you're going to need all the help that you can get. If you don't spend, then you're basically setting yourself back. It's as simple as that. And, the Dodgers have realized that. And, they've given out plenty of contracts over the years, plenty of big time contracts. Some of them haven't worked out. I mean, it's not always going to go your way. Some deals are just not going to pan out the way that you want them to. But, it looks like the Dodgers are finally starting to get the hang of this, of what they need to do in order to build a winning team. And they've consistently built a winning team. They've been, in terms of win and loss record-wise, they've been the winningest team by far in baseball so far this decade. And they're going to look to continue to do that down the road. And I'm not looking forward to it. But it is what it is. You got to give, look, the Dodgers are one of the most hated teams in baseball. But, you got to obviously, I'm not saying admire, but maybe like just for, the fact that they show that they care about winning.
Give them credit where credit's due.
You got to give them credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. So, Yep. Snell's on his way to LA, and Edman is there to stay in LA. And the Dodgers continue to just add on. And I know for a fact that is probably not it for them. They are probably
definitely not.
Never enough for them. Never enough for them. But what would be probably enough would be for their little brother, the Angels. They have signed Yusei Kikuchi to a 3-year deal and Kyle Hendricks to a 1-year deal. So the Angels are coming off their worst season in franchise history, 63-99, the complete opposite of what their world championship team did in 2002 when they went 99-63. So the Angels, like I said, they signed Yusei Kikuchi to a 3-year deal. I just want to quickly look up the details of this deal. So Kikuchi's deal, I'm reading this off of Sports Illustrated. So it is a 3-year deal worth $69 million. The deal is the largest the Angels have extended to a player in free agency since Perry Manishin. He became the general manager.
Yeah.
So it's the biggest contract he's handed out to a free agent so far during his tenure. Actually, this is coming from an Angels fans website. So I'm actually
okay.
Yeah, but Kikuchi, he obviously started last season with Toronto. He eventually was dealt to the Astros at the deadline, and he actually pitched very, very well with the Astros. He was a big reason why the Astros were able to clinch the American League West last season. And I'm actually I'm reading this quickly. So So with the Astros, Kikuchi had a 2.70 ERA and a 0.93 WHIP and 11.4 K per nine in his 10 starts with the Astros. So overall, Kikuchi did very well with the Astros. But this is the Angels we're talking about here. The Angels always go for the side dish. They never go for the big meat. They never go for the turkey. They always go for the stuffing or the yams or anything like that, using Thanksgiving terms right there.
Oh,
So
okay, let's go on.
so yeah, and Kyle Hendricks, the longtime Cub, the last remaining member of that 2016 World Series championship team from the Cubs, he signed a 1-year deal. I'm just going to quickly pull this up. It's a 1-year, $2.5 million deal. Like I mentioned, he spent his whole career with the Cubs up to this point. He is 97 and 81 with a 3.68 ERA in 270 career starts and also 6 relief appearances. So, like I said, it's the Angels. They're just trying to get better in any way, shape, or form. The Angels pitching has been putrid for, I'd say, close to 15 years now. They have not really had a legitimate ace starter caliber pitcher probably since, I guess, Otani, excluding Otani, John Lackey, I would say, or Jared Weaver, I guess. Jared Weaver, John Lackey, Shohei Otani. So they've only had 3 legitimate threatening starting pitchers in their rotation for the past 15 years, which is just not going to cut it. And the Angels, like I said, coming off their worst season in franchise history, couldn't pitch, couldn't hit. And, in my opinion, this doesn't really move the needle at all. I think this will maybe improve their win total by maybe 6 or 7 games. I think this will hopefully give them guys who can pitch more innings and they won't have to burn out the bullpen so much. But that Angel bullpen is also terrible. I mean, they had to deal Carlos Estevez, who I wasn't really necessarily fond of to begin with, but they had to deal him at the deadline last year. He eventually went to the Phillies. But the Angels need to do a lot more than this. And if I'm, being unbiased, even though I'm not an Angels fan, I'm not impressed with either of these moves.
Yeah, I mean, I slightly disagree with you in terms of the moves. I just think that it's the way that the management is handling the moves. I mean, Kikuchi, I think, had a really good year last year. But I mean, they're essentially paying him to be essentially their ace of their rotation. I don't see specifically the Angels being a team that is going to go out. I mean, I know there obviously has been some speculation on maybe like Max Fried going over there because, of course, he's from the LA market, right? He likes to be on the West Coast. Hint, hint, I don't have him in the West Coast in terms of my predictions. So we'll see in terms of what I have. But yeah, Kyle Hendricks, that's just kind of a veteran, like a third tier guy, right? He's gonna be probably number 3 or 4. They have guys like Reed Detmers and Tyler Anderson. It's like a very middling, like you're talking about with the Thanksgiving term. It's a very like side dish type of thing. They're always gonna be kind of like the second fiddle of. I mean, the Dodgers right now are definitely for sure the talk of baseball over there to say the least. But like, they're not even making a potential effort to make it even a competition right now. Their front office is just completely inept. And yeah, just I think the Kikuchi move could work out, but every single time I feel like when a player of a certain caliber goes to a team like Angels, they're just like they're cursed, or it just sucks for them. But yeah, I mean, I slightly agree with you, Ryan, in terms of the moves. I think Hendricks has ability. He's kind of pitched around here and there, but it's just like they're bringing them into a situation where they really lack pitching. And it's basically Groundhog Day all over again with them. It's basically going to be a similar thing of last year, but you just add some of these guys here that it's just a middling rotation. It's not going to get them anywhere. When you talk about the division and stuff, I always see them kind of as a team that's basically outside looking in. And the Angels, they're trying, but I just don't think that with the money that they have, they're just putting in enough, and they're not spending it wisely. They're basically just overpaying middling guys, and it's always been kind of the way that they've been acting for a while.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you that I think Hendricks still has some life in that arm. I think he could maybe win you maybe around 10 games or something like that if he's on his best. That might be I'd be stretching it a little bit.
Probably like I'd say 7 or 8.
Maybe 7 or 8 is probably more likely.
Mhm.
But yeah, the Angels are just so depleted in so many areas. I mean, their pitching really is just has just completely fallen off.
It's
It's
a time ticking bomb, honestly.
really it really is. I mean, the Angels are just kind of the cellar dwellers now at this point in the American League West. I mean, losing Otani was obviously the big blow for them. I mean, and obviously losing Mike Trout again.
Free him, please.
He signed there. So, I mean, for those who say free Trout, he was the one who signed that contract.
That's
So, I
true.
mean, he put himself in that predicament. But the Angels have just not been able to construct a well balanced, oiled machine that they can call a baseball team. And I mean, currently they have, I think, right, yeah, they have the longest playoff drought now in all of Major League Baseball, going on 11 years. They haven't made the postseason since 2014,
Mhm.
and really have not come anywhere close since then. So
Yeah, no, and they always start for the baseball season. There's always a trend with them where they start well for the first like 2-3 months, and they just don't have the rosters to basically sustain throughout the regular season. So I classify them as like the middling pretenders. That's really it. That's essentially it's a bunch of guys that are very there. It's essentially the car meme, right? You have Mike Trout as like the car, right? And then it's just the rest is just the scraps.
yeah, and also, I've been very vocal about him, obviously, in the past, but I think you got to cut the cord with Anthony Rendon. Just eat the contract. Just cut him. Just like give your young guys a chance to maybe make some kind of impression. Because at this
Mhm.
point, Rendon's roster spot is more valuable than paying that contract. It's not worth it
Yeah.
anymore. Just cut the cord with him, please. Honestly, that's
Yes.
my wish for the Angels. So yeah,
Mhm.
Kikuchi and Hendricks to Anaheim, and we'll see if this leads to any signs of improvement for the Halos in the near future. And more moves were made recently, and this involves the New York Mets and the Chicago Cubs. So the New York Mets, once again, scooping up an ex-Yankee off the streets. This is Frankie Montas, who Yankee fans were extremely fond of. That
Mhm.
is sarcasm. Montas and the Mets agreed to a 2-year, $34 million contract. Montas last year, he split time with Cincinnati and Milwaukee. And I want to quickly look up his stats for last season because I don't think they were that impressive, honestly. So Montas last year in 2024, yeah, they were awful actually. So he started 19 games with the Reds. He went 4-8 and had an ERA over 5.01. And then he pitched 11 games with Milwaukee, went 3-3 and had an ERA of 4.55.
Oh, jeez.
So the Mets are taking I mean, it's only a 2-year deal. It's only $34 million, which is pennies
Yeah,
for Steve Cohen. But
yeah.
I mean, Montas, I mean, God Almighty, he hasn't pitched well since 2022 when he pitched 19 when he was and he only pitched 19 games in 2022. His last legitimate good full season was 2021 when he started 32 games and had an ERA of 3.37. But he had shoulder problems in 2022 with the A's, and the Yankees were stubborn enough to trade for him at the deadline. Was terrible with the Yankees. Had an ERA of over 6 with them in 8 starts with them in 22. Pitched only a third of an inning in 23 for some reason held off on shoulder surgery right
Oh, that's
before,
right.
right before spring training, which to me goes to show that he had no desire to pitch a full season in 23. And he only pitched a third of an inning. Yankees gave up on him, and like I said, went to Cincinnati and Milwaukee, and really did nothing with either of those teams. Actually, he pitched kind of decently, I think, against the Mets in the wild card, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. I don't know if did he start any of those. I think he started one of
Which
those,
game?
but against the Mets,
He
and
did. Yep.
he
He
started
pitched game 2.
game 2, and that was the only
Yep.
game the Brewers won. So he actually, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So he actually, so yeah, maybe the Mets watched him and thought to themselves, you know what, there could be some life in his arm. Why not try
Mhm.
and scoop him up? And so, I mean, the Mets rotation is going to be probably their biggest question mark going into next season. I mean, they are going to lose Luis Severino. Sevy wanted a bigger contract. The Mets weren't willing to give him what he wanted. So in all likelihood, Severino is going to end up elsewhere. The Mets, they obviously, I'm trying to think of their rotation. I'm kind of just blanking on it. I mean, they still have
So right now they have Kodai Senga. They have Sean Manaea right now as a free agent, but we can talk about in terms of if Sean comes back, because I think there's a ton of speculation that they really view him as a massive piece of them. He was essentially their number one last year in the playoffs. They still have guys like Tyler McGill, David Peterson, kind of the back end guys, and Paul Blackburn too. But they need to really shore up that top end of the pitching rotation. I have one guy that I have going the Mets, hint, as we're probably gonna have a ton of hints before the end here. But yeah, I mean, I got to really quickly say this really quick around this was kind of a interesting one. I was not expect. I mean, I expected Montas to go somewhere, but at the Mets, this basically tells me that Sevy is all but gone. We'll see in terms of where this goes because he's pretty much has a very similar build to him, right? Where I feel like with David Stearns too, you got to take this into account. He's a ton of connections with Milwaukee, and I think that David Stearns can maybe look at this as potential reclamation project, and maybe he can see if he can kind of get himself back into pitching like he used to be, right? But 2 years, 34 mil. I'm kind of shocked that they didn't go for a guy like me. This takes out for a guy like a Walker Buehler, who I thought maybe he would be a really good fit for a team like the Mets. But yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. And, I want him to do well. But as Yankee fans called him, not Frankie Montas, it was Frankie Montas. So we'll see specifically how Met fans will feel about it because I think Yankee fans, including yourself, Ryan, I think weren't too fond of this man by the end of his time there.
No, whenever he comes back to Yankee Stadium, he'll be serenaded appropriately.
Well, he did pitch against you guys on July 4th this year.
Oh, he was on the Reds. Oh yeah, we couldn't hit him to save our lives. Because we need to make all of our ex-players look amazing.
Well, wasn't there always a trend with the Yankees? And I hate to rub it in your wound, but it's a guy with 5 ERA. It's every single time that's the offense.
Yeah, we always make them look like Sandy Koufax every time we face one of our ex-players. And whenever it's a position player, we always make sure we let them hit at least one home run against us as well.
Or the 9-hitter.
Whether it's a 9-hitter, whether it's a leadoff hitter. We will all, from Harrison Bader to Aaron Hicks, we will always let them have at least one home run. We must make our ex-players look amazing. We need to do that. So, yeah, I mean, Montas to the Mets, I mean, in my opinion, this is kind of a low-risk situation.
Exactly.
It's only 2 years. This is nothing for the Mets. I mean, if I'm the Mets, honestly, I would try and go for the big fish. I would probably try and go after Corbin Burns or somebody. I mean, they really need some help in that rotation next year because it's very depleted. I checked on Quintana; he's actually a free agent.
And Quintana, yes, that was the other one.
So Quintana, Manaea, and Sevy are all free agents. Yeah. So they're all out. So they really need. It's kind of a similar situation to the Yankees in 2003 going into 2004 when they lost Clemens, Pettit, and Wells. And they replaced them with Javi Vasquez, Kevin Brown, and somebody else. John Brown.
What a name.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But that was 21 years ago almost. But yeah, I mean, the Mets, they obviously exceeded expectations last year, going all the way to the NLCS and finishing 89 and 73. They obviously want to keep that momentum going, but it's gonna require some creativity and construction. They're gonna need to really focus on getting the right players, the right mix of talents, and not go too overboard and overpay some guys. Fortunately for them, this is the right kind of contract you give to a guy like Frankie Montas, who really has not proven anything for the past 3 years. This is kind of a prove-it deal. I mean, maybe the only slight criticism I would have for this deal is that it's a 2-year deal, not a 1-year deal. But I mean, it's only $34 million. So
and I think that the
$17 million a year.
In the pitching market, I think, Ron, as we can kind of tell, we'll talk about the Boyd contract in a little bit, but the pitching market's going to be absolutely crazy. So I think that there's going to be a ton of guys that are going to be overpaying, which shouldn't be as overpaid in terms of the way that their production is, but it's just kind of the way the market's going to be.
Yeah, well, speaking of Matthew Boyd, let's get into him. He signed a 2-year deal with the Cubs worth $29 million. So the biggest thing when it comes to Matthew Boyd is his inability to stay on the mound. He's had a lot of health issues over the years. He finally was able to come back last year for the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
He was obviously a Tiger for a long time, and then came back right in time for Cleveland. And he pitched very well in the postseason for the Guardians. Mm-hmm. He was very good for them. He started Game 3, I know, against the Yanks in the ALCS, and he really held them down. And he pitched pretty well against the Tigers as well. He started the clinching Game 5 against the Tigers and helped propel them against the Tigers, yes. And he helped propel the Guardians to victory in that series as well. So, I mean, basically the Cubs just signed Boyd to replace Kyle Hendricks in their rotation, basically, I would say. And, the Cubs definitely are going to need some pitching as well. I mean, the Cubs are kind of in an odd spot. They're not completely embarrassing, but they're just mid. They're very mediocre. They just need something. I mean, the Cubs, I don't think, are at a position yet to reel in some big fish. They kind of just are looking for guys to help build up a foundation for their future. And maybe Matthew Boyd will give them a couple of good seasons for themselves.
Yeah, Matthew Boyd, kind of very similar to the Montas one, low risk, high reward. I talked to you off the air before the show. Was the Cubs are not going to spend a lot of money in the starting pitching market and on the lineup. They're probably potentially, as John Morosi, take that name by the way, folks, with a grain of salt. But he did report before he went out the air as well that they're looking at bullpen arms, and I think that there could be a specific spot for the Cubs where they add a decent amount of the bullpen. But really, they're not going to be spending a ton when it comes to the starting rotation. So a guy like Matthew Boyd, who, of course, like you mentioned, has had a ton of injuries, but he obviously pitched really well with the Guardians if he stayed healthy. And he's a definition of a guy, Ryan, where you don't have to throw hard, and if you can control your stuff, you're still pretty productive. I saw last year during the postseason against you guys, he wasn't throwing hard, but he was able to command his spots well, and he was getting a lot of ground ball outs. And essentially, for a guy like him, in a pitcher's, I would say Wrigley Field's a very pitcher. I mean, it's kind of in the middle, I would say. I don't think it's very hitter friendly, but I don't think it's also pitchers friendly. It's kind of in the middle. So I think it's a pretty good match for the Cubs. And like you mentioned too, I think that is pretty much a Hendricks replacement. Hendricks doesn't throw hard. Boyd doesn't throw hard, but if their command is good and a 2-year, $29 million deal will work out. We'll see. Have to see.
Yep. I mean, it's a lower, like I said, it's very similar to the Montas deal. I mean, literally it's only $5 million less than what Montas is going to be making in Queens. And now the Cubs have Boyd, Imanaga. I mean, I don't really know their rotation very well off the top.
Tyon, but I think Tyon's a free agent possibly.
Tyon might be a free agent because I think he signed 2 years with the Cubs after 22.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly who else is in that rotation off the top of my head, but the Cubs, like I said, they're looking to just take baby steps back to respectability. And I mean, the National League Central, even though it's been dominated by
I'm sorry to cut you off. Justin Steele?
Justin Steele, that's who I was thinking of. Yeah. Yep. Steele is their ace, followed by Imanaga and then Boyd. Cubs got a lot of southpaws in that rotation. So
that's probably why they got him.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, the Cubs, playing in the National League Central, I mean, it can be anybody's for the taking any year, even though it's been mostly the Brewers for the past, 10 years basically. But yeah, the Cubs and Matthew Boyd are a match made in heaven for 2 years. So now we're going to move on to a match made in hell, which is the Tampa Bay Rays in Tampa Bay. So the Rays, as we mentioned, a couple of episodes ago, they are not going to be, obviously, Tropicana Field was destroyed by Hurricane Milton. Again, saying all of our prayers to everybody who was affected by Hurricane Milton. You're in our thoughts and prayers. Hopefully things are getting a little better. I know it's probably
I'll be in Florida, by the way, at the end of this month, so I'll kind of see how things work out down there.
Yeah. So Tropicana Field obviously is not playable for 2025. The roof is completely destroyed, and I did a short video a couple of weeks ago detailing how the Rays are going to be playing the 2025 season at Steinbrenner Field in Tampa. Steinbrenner Field obviously is the spring training home of the New York Yankees and the home of the Tampa Tarpons, the single-A affiliate of the Yankees. So the Rays, though, their future is kind of in question which I feel has been a trend for ever since they first came into existence in 1998. But the Rays obviously were paid their end of a deal that they had with Pinellas County for a new stadium in 2028, but they suffered a setback on October 29th because the commission of Pinellas County, so I'm reading this off of WUSF by Mark Schreiner, the guy's name is. So I'm just reading this right now. So the team's the team president, the Rays president, Matt Silverman, said the Rays have fulfilled its obligations to date and continue to wait for decisions and actions by the city of St. Petersburg and Pinellas County. So the commission, what they did was they delayed a planned vote on bonds. That was scheduled for October 29th. The bonds obviously would be handed to the Rays to help pay for the funding of the stadium. That got postponed, and then the commission pushed back another vote, which was scheduled for November 19th. And that was partially to allow newly elected commissioners some time to review the agreement. So right now, the deal for a new stadium is at a standstill because there's still no approval from the commission to help out the Rays pay for the stadium, basically, essentially, to put it in simplest terms. So right now, all the Rays have confirmed are that they're playing at Steinbrenner Field in 2025. But beyond that, that's still in question. There's no word as to whether or not Tropicana Field will be ready in time for 2026. Obviously, we mentioned how that could probably take up to a year to fix the roof of Tropicana Field. But we also mentioned how would it even be worth it to fix Tropicana Field at this point if you're already going to be paying so much money on a new stadium entirely, and you're still waiting word on that. There's just a lot of question marks surrounding the Rays. This is probably the stickiest situation that they've been in ever since in their whole existence. And I mean, Hurricane Milton just completely screwed the Rays in this case scenario, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's just still more of the story to be told, and like you mentioned in the short video, make sure to watch the short video that Ryan put out. But yeah, I know we were talking about in terms of like the cables and stuff, how I was able to basically hold down the roof, which essentially the roof came down apart. There was obviously a lot of, stories kind of after the fact, but the biggest one that I saw was that the Rays are going to be playing a lot of games, like a lot of their home games are basically be kind of mixed in like early on the season. I did kind of see that, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I'll say this, Ryan, and this is kind of a hot take, but there could be a potential situation where we don't see them play at Tropicana Field again.
Yep.
There's really, because when you look at it, right, if obviously this year, right, they're not going to get it done. Next year, they're going to obviously put a ton of funding into it, but then if they're trying to make the stadium, and then of course try to get them to play again there, then if you're talking about for them to kind of move out, then what's kind of the hiccup there? Must be then Pinellas County is trying to make their efforts for them to stay in kind of that area, but maybe they don't have the funding to make it outside stadium. That could be potentially it. I don't know. But that's kind of the outside thing to kind of think about. Of course, like we talked about, the state, obviously, even 2 months after kind of the overall hurricane happened, we're trying to make sure that everyone's good. Everyone's basically safe and all present and accounted for. And hopefully when I go down the end of this month down there, I'll kind of decent glimpse of, how it looks down there. And typically, because a lot of my family from my mom's side lives by St. Petersburg, there's a pretty good chance I'll be going past Tropicana Field and kind of see in terms of what the place will be looking like. It probably won't be looking like, obviously there's really not a lot to look at anyway, but now, of course, with it being kind of destroyed, right, there might not be anything to even look at outside of it. So just a crazy situation, and there's obviously still more ahead that we have no idea what's going to happen from here. So let's see.
Yeah, as a result of the reshuffling, the Rays are now slated to play 19 of their first 22 and 47 of their first 59 games at Steinbrenner Field. And just 16 of their 51 games between July and August will be played at Steinbrenner Field. And the Rays are going to be frequently on the road down the stretch. So they are now primed to be visitors in 69 of their final 103 games. I mean, Florida gets very hot, obviously, during the summer. So, I mean, it's understandable why they had to shuffle some series around. But, yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. I mean, the damage to Tropicana Field's roof is $23 million. So they had to pay the Yankees to use Steinbrenner Field for this season. They had to pay them for that. They had money stowed away for their future stadium, and now they also have $23 million that they would have to spend if they wanted to move back into Tropicana Field. So it's like money going everywhere that they would need to do in order to make all of this work out. But yeah, honestly, if I had to guess, I think they're done with Tropicana Field. I don't see them moving back to Tropicana Field. I don't think there's any point in this at this point in time. I think they might just have to. I mean, playing at Steinbrenner Field for 3 straight years, though, is just.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think a year would be okay, right? There's been a lot of situations where backup plans, of course, for different places, whether something's being renovated or, this situation where it's a massive emergency where there's no other situation but to do this. They're going to have to kind of see during this season run. I'm going to be very interested to see what type of contingency plans they have coming up for the next couple of years. Do they want to try to bring Tropicana Field back in a certain capacity, right? Type of form? I don't think it's going to be essentially the same capacity of what it looks like, or they completely just like, all right, we're essentially the area essentially there is over, right? It's tough. Basically, I think for a lot of people down there want to have. My grandfather actually down there, he's not a Rays fan, he's a Red Sox fan like me, but for him, he said it's a really cool vantage point to see games there, right? That's obviously his opinion. He's right around the kind of that area. And I don't know in terms of how he would feel, right, if they never play games there again, because that's pretty much the closest place to him. So people like him and some other people that are kind of the area, I know that a ton of people outside of St. Pete think the place is an absolute shithole, but there might be some people that don't think that, right? So, there's obviously a lot of this story that still we have to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, and also it's still not confirmed that the new stadium is going to be ready for 2028 if they're having this problem with the county. I mean, right now that the plans to build that stadium are kind of at a standstill, so they're trying to get that all squared away too. So, I mean, maybe if things don't move along, relatively soon, I mean, the Rays may have to start considering relocation. So, I mean, to have. I don't think it would be in Oakland, but I could potentially see cities like Nashville or
Nashville,
the Carolinas.
Yeah, no, not Seattle.
Maybe Nashville, maybe Montreal.
Montreal, that's a good one.
But
maybe a team in like Mississippi or Alabama.
I don't know. I'm just kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. But the Rays, right now, they're paying the Yankees $15 million. They're looking at $23 million in damages to Tropicana Field, and they're already dedicating themselves to building an entirely new stadium in 3 years, but they don't have the city's help yet. So it's not a good situation for the Rays. The hurricane was the last thing that organization needed, and the fact that it happened, it's like, what else can go wrong with this?
Yeah, because they don't spend money already as is, but now essentially you add this onto it, and it's basically like they are absolutely. And then I know obviously this is a terrible situation, but in terms of what they want to have for a building future, they obviously have some prospects, right? And that's fun and all, but in terms of making a ready to win roster, they're fucked.
They're gonna have to take a back seat in that category for quite some time. Unfortunately, they got to focus more on their existence rather than contending. So the Rays are just kind of between a rock and a hard place. Basically, there's literally So we'll see what happens. But the Rays are going to be playing 2025 at Steinbrenner Field. And that'll be weird to see them playing in a facility surrounded by Yankee Navy blue. It'll definitely be a strange sight. So now we'll move on to our final topic of this episode, which is winter meetings and free agency previews. So next week, the winter meetings will take place. I believe it's in Dallas this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
They're in Dallas, Texas. I think they go from December 9th through December 11th or December 8th through December 10th. One of those two.
I think it's 8 to the 12th, maybe. It's like 4 days.
Like 4 days.
3 or 4 days, right around there.
So yeah, the winter meetings take place next week. Last year's winter meetings were relatively uneventful, other than the Juan Soto deal. And speaking of Juan Soto, he's still a free agent. Obviously, he's the biggest name on the free agent market. And according to numerous sources, many teams are offering him humongous deals. And, it was even reported. I think it was maybe by Randy Miller of NJ.com or something like that.
Yep.
That the Yankees had to up the ante already on their offer to Soto. So if I had to guess, I mean, I'm guessing that these contracts are anywhere from like 12 to 13 years and upwards of $600 million. That's my guess of what most of these contracts would consist of. And the teams that are involved, obviously the biggest two are the Yankees and the Mets. The Dodgers even had talks with Soto, apparently. I don't expect Soto to go to the Dodgers, though. Your Red Sox were another team that spoke with Soto. They offered him a contract. I think the Blue Jays.
Like an early one, preliminary one.
I think the Blue Jays offered him a deal as well. So Soto has a bunch of contracts at his fingertips. And I'm sticking with my gut that he's either going to stay with the Yankees or go to the Mets. That's where my heart lies, and I do think he's going to make his deal before the start of the winter meetings. So within the next week or two, I think he's going to make his decision. I don't know how.
Yeah. For me, you're going to like this, but I don't see a world where he leaves the Yankees. I know that I think that the Mets are going to be the highest offer, but I do think that the Yankees are going to make an offer very around that ballpark, in which he looks at the place where he was just in the World Series compared to a place where, yes, they might have the better future. And of course, Lindor and a bunch of guys can maybe help out, but he was just very embraced. And it's really painful for me to say, because I would kill for the Red Sox to get him hell, but it felt like with like the Dominican population, the Bronx, him and Aaron Judge, kind of the overall 1-2 punch they had there. I think it would just be absolutely crazy for the Yankees. This is very Mookie Betts like with the Red Sox, in which I know, of course, Aaron Judge is there, but if Juan Soto leaves the Yankees, Ryan, I'm not saying you guys are bleak down the road, but he is that generational of a talent that, especially he's not even entering his prime. He's like 25, 26, that you can have this guy for the next 10, 12 years. The Yankees are going to be an absolute force. He is just that good. I know a lot of people, of course, are looking at his defense, which of course isn't great. But in terms of that bat, it's going to, of course, kind of take a lot of the stuff that kind of comes with the bat. And that's, of course, that his bat, he has a great eye at the plate. You saw in terms of how the Yankees lineup was this year when it came down to the overall protection around Soto, because a lot of pitchers had to pitch to him. And, of course, a lot of other guys like Judge and Gleyber Torres had a lot better pitches to swing at. So I have Juan Soto to the Yankees. I'm going to say around 11, 12-year range. I'm going to go around 650, 660.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think my confidence in him re-signing with the Yankees kind of like went down a little bit because I was hearing all these other teams making him an offer as well.
So that's the thing. And I worry about this as a Red Sox fan because I've been seeing so much of it, but I'm like, this screams us as leverage like the Blue Jays were with Ohtani. But to be fair though, that the Red Sox are still in this ballpark in the mix. When they had the pursuit of Ohtani, they got through maybe like the first meeting or two, and then they're basically completely out. So this tells me that I know like guys like David Ortiz, Pedro Martinez, they are really pushing for this to happen. And if we're looking overall tier in terms of a ranking of what Soto in terms of the overall 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna have the Yankees at 1, the Mets at 2, and the Red Sox at 3. I don't think that the Blue Jays specifically, I think they'll be outside looking out, same like the Phillies. It's going to be really the 2 New York teams and the Red Sox really that are going to go for the massive push. And I just don't see a world where Juan Soto leaves the Yankees. I just don't.
Yeah, I think I still think he'll end up with the Yanks, but I'm taking it with a grain of salt, though. I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, it's his decision at the end of the day. So, but I do think the Yankees are going as high as they possibly can, while trying to be a little financially responsible and trying to construct, a team that could help, help him out. You don't want to blow so much money on one player, but like you said, Soto's a generational talent. You would probably have to it's obviously going to take a major sacrifice to re-sign him. But Soto, like I said, he's probably going to make his decision within the next week, right around the winter meeting. So keep an eye out for that. Second biggest name on the free agent market is Corbin Burnes. Obviously, he had a very good season with the Orioles. But I don't see him re-signing with the Orioles. I see him signing with a National League East team. I either see him going to the Mets or the Braves. The Mets obviously are very short on their rotation, like I mentioned. I think he would be a good fit there. The Braves are also down a starter as well. They have Chris Sale, obviously, the National League Cy Young Award winner. Spencer Strider, obviously, he's still coming back from Tommy John surgery. You don't know what you're going to get out of him eventually when he comes back. So I think the Braves could be a reasonable destination for him as well. I could also maybe see him going to I think San Diego possibly if the Padres want to offer him something. The Dodgers, I think, have already stacked up enough. I don't know if the Dodgers are going to be willing to pay more money for Corbin Burnes, because I don't think they need to go any more to the extra mile. But they're the Dodgers; you never know. But if I had to guess, I mean, also maybe the Phillies. I don't know. I think he's going to go to an NL East team. I'm leaning more towards the Mets or the Braves for Corbin Burnes.
Yeah, my prediction for Corbin Burnes is the Mets. I think that they missed out on Soto, and that's their plan B option. Also, too, the connection of Stearns, him in Milwaukee. Burnes, of course, was in Milwaukee for most of his career so far. So I just think personally it's a match made in heaven. They got another guy to match up with Kodai Senga. I know Senga's had some injuries in the last couple of seasons, and I think that Burnes, as great as he also is, he's also very durable. So if somehow Senga, I obviously don't never want to wish injuries on anyone. But if somehow Senga went down or he had a little bit of a setback throughout this year, they have somebody, of course, to counterpart him and somebody else to lean on. I just think it makes too much sense. And I think that Cohen's going to give him by far the most money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that coming. Another big name, Pete Alonso, former first baseman of the Mets. I either see Alonso re-signing with the Mets. Honestly, looking at it, I think he's either going to re-sign with the Mets, or I could also see him maybe going to Houston, honestly.
Okay. Yep.
I mean, the Astros, they don't really have a legitimate threatening starting first baseman. Their first baseman situation last year, I think they rotated between John Singleton, who had some pop in his bat. I forget who else played first base for them last season, but I think Alonso could be a good fit for the Astros, especially with the Crawford boxes in the left field. He could definitely pop some home runs down that left field line. So for Alonso, I'm going to say he either re-signs with the Mets. I could also see him in Houston. Trying to think of what else could be. Seattle probably, but the Mariners are so home run heavy and they just don't make enough contact. So I don't know if that necessarily is the right place for him.
Maybe the Cubs.
Maybe the Cubs. It also depends on what the Cubs want to do with Cody Bellinger. The Cubs have talked about maybe moving on from Cody Bellinger. The Yanks have always had a fascination with Cody Bellinger, especially since his father Clay was an ex-Yankee. And I think Cody would honestly rake at Yankee Stadium. I definitely think that short portion right definitely suits him. The Yankees, obviously.
Great plan B, to be honest.
It would be a nice plan B. But I also think if the Yankees don't get Soto back, I think they're either going to pursue either Bellinger or Anthony Santander.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those would be the two other likely options. Teoscar Hernandez was a name that the Yankees were really interested in as well, but I don't see him leaving Los Angeles. I think he's going to resign with the Dodgers. He's a perfect fit there. And
either there or with us. So yeah.
Teoscar Hernandez is another big name. Trying to remember who else. Alex Bregman, obviously another big name who's a free agent.
Yep.
I either see him re-signing with the Astros or maybe going to the Tigers to reunite with AJ Hinch.
I have the Tigers in my prediction.
Yeah.
Another swirling rumor out there with him is that the Phillies might trade Alec Bohm, and so that Bregman might go there, and I could see that possibly as well too. and that could really help shore their defense too.
Yeah, Bohm had a tough postseason for the Phillies. I mean, Bohm overall, I mean, he had a very good first half of the Phillies. Kind of fell off in the second half.
Yeah, he was awful in the playoffs too.
Terrible in the playoffs.
Mhm.
So the Phillies definitely need to revamp their roster as well, because they had a disappointing performance against the Mets in the division series. So I mean, there's just a lot of question marks. But in terms of my predictions, I think the first name that will be signed is going to be Soto because he's the biggest name, and he doesn't want to wait too long to sign. But I think the order is probably going to go Soto. I think I'm going to say maybe Alonso signs shortly after Soto.
Okay.
And I think Burns is probably I don't know. I think Burns might be maybe after maybe Christmas. I think because not many because I've heard some teams are interested in Burns,
Mhm.
but I just think Burns is going to take his time a little bit. I don't think I'll wait as long as obviously the Boris clients
Oh,
from last year. Nobody will wait that long, but
mhm.
yeah, I just think that when it comes to Burns's case, I think he's going to get more offers if he just waits maybe a little bit, but I don't think he'll push the envelope too far. I think if he gives it a little time, he'll get a lot more generous offers for himself, and he'll eventually make his decision maybe towards the end of the month or as we get into
Yeah.
the year.
I know that we're running out of time, but really quick for me, I think that the pitching is actually going to go before Soto with kind of the way this trend is kind of with right now with the deals kind of floating out. So I have Burns, Max Fried, who by far you are Boston Red Sox, I hope. But him and Fried, Burns, and who's the other one? I was missing somebody else. I think a massive pitcher, but regardless, then I would have Soto and Alonso and Bregman and all those guys kind of waiting suit out there. So I would say even by this week, like the end of this week, that the massive rumors and stuff are going to really pick up. And then, of course, the fireworks and the fun hopefully will start to begin by as early as a week from today.
Yep, should be very interesting, and we'll see how everything unfolds in the coming weeks. But we're out of time here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this off-season edition of Hitting for the Cycle. That's Ben Kruse. I'm Ryan Touhey, and we'll see you next time, whenever that is.